Well, thank you all for being here and watching this video. Just gonna get started right away, real quick. What a week! What a week! Um, we got some exciting things, and I won't spoil what Peyton's gonna talk about because he kind of has the really exciting part tonight to talk a little bit about kind of bringing something from the past to the present, like the missing links. But as far as what I wanted to talk about tonight is practice. You ever heard the concept of practice makes perfect? And they talk about repetition's the mother of skill and practice. Well, if someone said, Kevin, do you practice contract law? My answer would be yes. They said, do you practice fitness? My answer would be yes. If you said, do you practice recruiting? I'd say yes. They'd say, do you practice getting customers? I'd say yes. They'd say, do you practice real estate? I would say, I absolutely do. And gosh, isn't it, it's like if you take into consideration this business, I see people get in, get some one little bad thing happens, they quit. I see people looking for a reason and out all the time. But I'm in a place in my life on a personal level where I realize the conflicts happening overseas are going to make more inflation. The public policies that are happening are going to make more inflation. The cost of life is going to be more, and we're not getting any younger. And the amount of money that you need today versus a year ago or 2 years ago is greater. And so there's this aspect of like, oh, I get in a business and I go, and you see it in this type of business. 6 to 12 months, they make an initial run, and the moment it's out of their comfort zone, they already reached out to the low-hanging fruit of their lives and the people that might listen to them. When it gets hard, they go. And then they take themselves with them to the next opportunity. They're not practicing the necessary things. In reality, what they're doing is they're opportunistically hoping that it'll pop off in kind of like a lottery mindset. And it's interesting because it's like if you say, hey, I want to start working out so that I can get a six pack. Like, okay, I know a guy who was in his 70s and he was like heavily overweight, and he decided he was going to do that. And he like didn't know anything about fitness, didn't know anything about nutrition, didn't know how it all worked, taught himself, got a trainer, learned, and within 2 3 years he was like super ripped. And it's this concept of practice. And so he didn't necessarily go into fitness with that idea like I'm going to go get a six pack. For him it was like I am going to begin a practice. How many people do yoga as a practice? How many people do stretching as a practice? Pilates? Like you can give so many different examples. Like people practice law, people practice medicine. I realized that in my life I'm not interested in the do something, get a result, do something, get a result. For me, this is a practice. I'll never stop doing fitness. I'll never stop trying to eat a little bit better than I did yesterday. I'll never stop trying to grow just a little bit more than I did, because for me, it's a practice. It's like Peyton and I were talking about this yesterday. I got the privilege of being able to go through a workout of his. My body is so sore, and I feel like I didn't do anything at the gym yesterday. Like I didn't feel like I did a workout. I left the gym being like, well, probably won't be sore, but maybe my legs, because I'd worked those already. So sore, so sore. It's the concept of going slow to go fast. There's this element of patience in a practice. And so with regards to this business and the skill sets required in this business, for me, it's like, I'll continue to do this call. I'll continue to talk to people about greens. Because for me, it's a daily practice. Today, I went to a Chinese restaurant, and the waiter had so much light in his eyes. He had this spark. He was excited about life. He had an energy that made me look like a dullard, a depressed little dullard. This guy was so light, so much energy and enthusiasm. And I'm like, in theos comes from the word in theos in Greek, which means godlike. And this guy's over here so enthusiastic. And I was like, man, I got to recruit him. I remember over the last 10 years, as I wasn't in a business like this and I didn't have an opportunity for someone, so much wasted talent passed me by. So many people that had the spark and I had nothing for them. And how cool would it have been to collect some of those people over the journey? But I didn't have anything that I was practicing. And it's like I'm practicing multi-level marketing. I'm practicing recruiting, retaining, I'm practicing onboarding. for me, it's something that I will do over and over and over again. Not until I get a result or until I'm good at it. It's just something I do now. It's like I'm never gonna, if I achieved a six pack, does that mean I'm gonna stop working out? That's what most people do. It's like, oh, I got the result. Now it's gone. I made a big chunk of money and they use it and it's gone. It's like, that's the wrong mindset. My goal with this part of the call would be if you could adopt this as a practice. And what is that? It's building a list, it's cultivating a list, it's presenting to the list, it's recruiting, retaining. It's just a series of skills that become a process, and you take people through a process. And it's like, that's not sexy. It's not that scary. It's also not that hard. It's just a lot of little things. It's not that hard to work out. It could be walking for 10 minutes. It could be stretching. It could be doing 15 squats and a couple push-ups. It doesn't have to be this huge thing, yet we do that in our mind. But it's that idea of if you want to do something you've never done to get something you've never got, well, then you're going to do something different kind of a thing. And so for me, I'm like, I'd invite each of you to take this up like a practice. Because I practice real estate. I practice contract law. I practice fitness. I practice nutrition. And what does that look like for me? It's something I do every day. It's one of the things when I wake up that's something that I'm going to take an action step in that direction. It may not be that big. We only have so many hours in a day, but it's like one or two texts, one or two conversations, maybe a video, maybe, and it's like, I'm excited to go to the gym. For me to go to the gym to work out was the act of falling in love with the process. For me, it wasn't about the result or getting sore or getting buff or some kind of outcome. It was like that concept I've told you before, where it's like 15 years ago, I was in my like early 20s. In 15 years, I'm going to be in my early 50s. It matters now what I do, so it compounds over time. And so for me, it's the practice of making myself look younger, having more energy, having more like drive. And it's just little things compounded over time. Remember, by smaller, simple works, that's how glory comes to pass. And so in regards to like this business, it's like, hey, I'm going to talk to a couple people a day. I'm going to practice active. I'm going to practice against all odds. It's like, that's the internalization of this week for me, thanks to Peyton. And he's the next part he's going to talk about is like so phenomenal in regards to the implementation of this based on the reprisal of something from a long time ago and kind of some of the skills and mechanics that entails. I think it just clicked. I think this week it clicked because I'm like, I know I'm not going anywhere. I know I want the result. I know I want the outcome, but it feels fragmented. It all has for a minute. And yet we know the people. It's like that statistic that says if you've gone to high school in the United States and you've lived in the United States in high school, you know 1,000 people. Your social media probably has 1,000 people. That's 2,000 people. You've probably only talked to maybe like 100 or 200 of those tops. That's like 1,800 people that you're scared to talk to. They're out of the comfort zone, like it said before. But if the practice increases, it's like the line that rolls off the cuff, the segue that just is right, the way you explain the business. And it's like, I've been doing that for over a year. I've been doing that for months and months. And it's like, it never seemed to click in. And I'm like, it's a practice. And I've practiced a lot and I'm still not better to the degree that I'd want to be. But it doesn't mean that once I got the result, I would stop. If anything, it's like the last time when I got a really great residual income and my lifestyle was like, I didn't answer to anybody and money came in every Monday. And it was like enough to pay your bills for a month sometimes. And it was like, wow, this is exciting. I had such gratitude for my income that I wanted to, I don't want to like earn it or deserve it, but it was an aspect of like, now that I'm here, I want to sustain it. And it means even that much more to me because it's real. And so for me, it wasn't like I get it and I stop. It's a practice. It's something you just do. And so that's why it's like the people that have the success stay with one company. The people that have success dive into the one thing. It's the legacy that comes from it. And so for me, the word this week is practice. And so Peyton, I'm going to pass it to you because you got some hot fire and I need to be quiet. Thanks for listening.
All right, I got to unmute. I was taking some notes there right at the, trying to jot down a few ideas here. I was reviewing an old document that Kevin and I actually used to build a very successful business like this over 10 years ago. And before I jump into that real quick, I forget the athlete that it is, but have you guys seen that clip? It's a basketball player and they're grilling him at the press conference and they're like, they're like, oh, Mr. So-and-so, like you missed practice. And he's like, wait, you guys you talking about practice? Like, and he just roasts them. So it's funny that we are discussing this concept of turning our life into a practice, because there are some world-class people out there who might scoff at the idea, every day is game day, for example. But the truth is, and this is kind of the revelation that I had, and this is the revelation Kevin's having, and the revelation really of life, is that we all are posed with what I would call a paradox. And the paradox goes something like this. It's that we want residual income so that we don't have to have structure, right? If you ask most people, if you ask yourself, like, hey, if you just had a check that arrived every month on the 15th that paid for all of your bills and excess, like you had overflow, and it happened month after month, year after year, what would you do? And you start to think to yourself, like, well, I would go hang out on a beach, and I would go over here, and I would just do whatever the F I want with whoever I want, whenever I want. And the paradox, of course, is that it's like, so we want that so that we can basically have freedom and no structure. And yet it requires structure to generate residual income, right? So one of the biggest challenges that each and every one of us will basically face is learning how to employ ourselves, right? It's like the people say you're in business for yourself but not by yourself. But and that's true, certainly, as you get your business rolling, right? Like once you have an enterprise that's in process, you have more and more people that can help you. You have people in your support team, you have people that are going to be part of your organization, you have upcoming leaders, you have existing leaders. But when you are trying to go from 0 to 3, or you're trying to go from 3 to 9, 3x3, or to 3x3x3 to 27, it can be extremely difficult because you are an army of one. And so learning to basically discipline yourself to be employed by yourself. Like I always like to think about it is that I say, okay, if I, showed up to this business and I worked for me, would I be happy with me or would I fire me? Right. And if you think about it, like if you're running a tile business or if you're running a contracting business and somebody doesn't show up on a Monday, you might call them, ask where they are. They don't show up on a Tuesday. You might send them a text. They don't show up on a Wednesday. They're fired. They're not getting, they can collect their last check and you're going to hire somebody else. But yet we will go along in this business, myself included, for months or years at a time, being completely fireable. And we never fire ourselves, So it's like, so if we're not willing to fire ourselves, then what we ought to do is we ought to figure out what we actually need to do, what disciplines that we need to do, or what we need to practice. And then we simply need to make the objective that practice. And the last thing that I'll say before I kind of go into the actual specifics, so hopefully you can walk away tonight with what you can anticipate as a tool or a resource coming from us, but also, some concepts that you can sit down for yourself, or if you're watching the replay of this and say, okay, I'm going to design a little bit of, I know that these nuts and bolts exist. So like Kevin's describing with fitness, like we know that there are certain mechanics of what you need to do with your food and what you need to do in fitness in order to generate a fit result. But if just to make an analogy, like what you will decide is where you want to do the fitness, right? You will decide whether you want to do it at a home gym or at a yoga studio, or whether you want to do it at a corporate gym, or if you want to get some weights, or if you want to get some exercise bands, or if you want to do, there's different ways that you can decide that. This is a metaphor. And then same with nutrition, right? It's that there are elements of nutrition that will cause a result for everybody, but not everybody has to eat the exact same meals at the exact same times, right? Like you just have to take the parameters and you have to kind of build out your program that fits inside those parameters. Because what we do know is that 1 + 1 does equal 2, right? Like if you do the right inputs, you will get the right outputs. You might not know how long it's going to take, but you do know that if you do a few simple things repeatedly on a consistent basis, you will eventually get the result. So when you think about this actual business, what's so important about this is that too often we think of this as something where we're hoping to basically get it going and then step away. And it is a much easier way to think about it as to say, this is like having an army to move bricks. So we got to carry 1,000 bricks. And it's like, you can either carry all 1,000 bricks yourself and get the same result, or you can have 1,000 people that each carry 1 brick forward. But the catch is that those 1,000 people don't step unless you step. So they are like bots. Imagine that you have 1,000 people that are like from one of these sci-fi movies, and they're like looking to you, and you can literally move 1,000 bricks across, wherever it is that you need to go. And you can do it in one You know, if you had to take 1,000 trips to move 1,000 bricks by yourself, or you could just walk one time across a field and all of your, robots would walk with you, and they each would carry one brick, and then you'd move the 1,000 bricks in one walk. And the only difference is that the robots don't move until you move. That's what this business is like. So if you basically take what Kevin's saying and you imagine yourself saying, okay, I will never be able to do enough on my own to get this into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. I will never be able to contact enough people. I will never be able to gather enough customers. I will never be able to apply enough customer service. I'll never be able to retain enough customers to make it so that I can make the kind of money that I want to make alone. But if I can become a master of practicing a small set of daily disciplines, daily and weekly, forever, then we could have an entire army of people that would be willing to do the same thing. And you can create a result that is literally astronomical, unfathomable. I mean, talk about like the settlers moved however many millions of rock ton 10 miles from Little Cottonwood Canyon all the way to Temple Square to erect a temple over the course of 3 lifetimes, right? You don't have to do that. You don't have to have a horse and a cart. You don't have to move granite. All you have to do is have a few simple daily disciplines with the greens that we're going to practice daily and weekly over time. And eventually you'll have enough robots, but these are going to be autonomous, individual, cool people that you love to hang out with who also see the vision and want to do the same thing. And everybody's going to go together and create an incredible result. So that's like the mindset part of this. But one of the things that I know to be very true is that it is such an abstract concept that you can go from 1 to 3 to 9 to 27 to 81 to 243 and so forth and so on, and eventually have this giant business. Like, especially when you're out there and you're sharing a stick of greens, sharing a stick of greens, sharing a stick of greens, sharing a stick of greens. Someone says, oh, I take this one. I don't take that. What's in it? Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull. What's in this, right? That's how like a lot of people are. And all of a sudden you talk to 15 people and you get one customer, you make $25 one time, your auto ship costs you $89. And you think to yourself, like, this is impossible. It's impossible, right? But it's not impossible, because ultimately all that you need to create something big is you need to have a good idea, the willingness to pursue it, and a simple system that anybody can follow. And like Jim Rohn always talks about, is that if you sow a good seed, you may not always fall on solid ground. Even if you plant a good seed, some may wither and die in the sun. Some might start to grow and they might die because they're on rocky soil. But the sower that sows a good seed will land on good soil eventually and harvest a great crop. And this works exactly the same thing. So what are those simple daily things that you have to do? If you're following, along, and we're talking about fitness, how many times have you heard an apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? It's not eat 7 apples on Saturday, right? And this business works exactly the same. And so it's not about blasting on one day. It's about doing a little bit each day over time and helping other people learn to do the exact same thing. So from the top down, what are the actual behaviors that need to happen in order for something good to be created? Now, I will say this: I'm going to give you a couple of parameters here. Kevin's saying he's guilty of the blast, right? It's like talk to 10 and ghost for 10 days, right? It's like, no, you got to go one a day, one a day, one a day, one a day. Same thing with push-ups. You can't do 100 push-ups on Saturday and none until Friday and expect anything to happen, but 10 a day every day, and something will happen, right? So 15 apples on Thursday. So number one is learning how to make exposures. An exposure is simply going to be sharing your website, sharing a stick of greens, or inviting somebody to watch a video. We have some different videos that exist. You have some on your website. Kevin has some that he can text you, but simply asking somebody to look at a little bit of information. That alone is not enough. Okay. So that alone is not enough. What you have to do is you have to make an exposure. Then what you have to do is you have to take the people you make exposures with, and you have to have a compelling invitation to show them something bigger than that. Right now, this is super, super important, because it's very easy for us to say, hey, would you like to talk to my guy, Kevin, who, is the top of the company and has made some good money with this, has a team in multiple countries. And they might say no, right? Because what you're trying to do here is you're not trying to, the person doesn't know what they don't know, right? All that you are doing is you're using a sequence of information and direction to take somebody through a process. So step number one is to introduce to them a product. There's a lot of different ways to introduce to them a product, but we talk about that all the time. The question that I really like is, hey, what are you doing as a foundation of your nutrition? What are you doing to get your vitamins and minerals? What are you doing to get your greens? Are you taking a green, right? Like any number of those different questions are valid. Kevin has gone over, if you can go back like maybe 2 weeks in his archives, you can learn about some of the questions that are very effective to ask people about, what they're doing, or maybe to create an opening to share the product. Then you need to use some type of compelling invitation to say, hey, a friend of ours is growing a new greens company. It's harvested in the most mineral rich soil on the planet in Utah, certified organic. And anyway, we're just getting the word out. So here, I want to share with or if you are feeling a little bit, sparky, you could say, hey, I want to bless you with one of these. Okay. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to have them shake it and take it. So you're going to tear the top off, pour it in a bottle of water, mix it up, shake it, take it, right? And what's so great about that is that people are going to have an impression. What we've learned over the years and what we've learned with Active Greens is that if you give somebody a stick of Active Greens, it's going to wind up at the bottom of a pocket and it's going to explode in the washer at some point, or it's going to wind up in the door panel of their car, and they're going to suck it through the hose at the car wash 6 months from now. But if you have somebody shake it and take it, you tear it open, have them put it in water, and they actually take it. Kevin's experienced this so many different times. They're going to have a reaction to it. And more often than not, it's going to be really good, because if they've ever tried a greens product before, or if they don't take a greens product because they think that it's not going to be good, they're usually impressed with the fact that it mixes easily, it tastes good, and it's not really like anything else that they've ever really tried before. So at this point, now you're going to say, it's a command, right? Say, hey, let me get your number, or hey, what I want to do is put you in a group chat quickly with my friend Kevin. You're going to love Kevin. He's incredible. He knows tons and tons of stuff about birthdays, but he won't go there unless you ask him. But he's been a part of this company since the beginning, and he works closely with the founders of it. And I want to introduce you to him, because I remember how you said that you wanted to take your family on a trip this holiday season, but money's been tight like it's been for everybody. And I don't know if it's for you, but this might be something that could help you get closer to that. So what did I do there? And this is so important, is that as you're taking people through the process, you're not speaking to what you want, you're speaking to what they want, right? So I don't know if it's for you, but, and whatever kind of conversation you've had with this person, whether it's like a stranger off the street or whether it's a friend, right? Like it comes down to one of a couple things. Either people want more health, more wealth, more time, more freedom, right? And they're either running away from pain or they're running towards hope. Right? So it's like somebody might not be feeling very well and they're looking for a way to feel better. Flu season's coming up, man. You start to talk to somebody, they'd be like, man, my whole family got so sick last year. Every year we do that. Hey, what are you guys doing to boost your immune system? Well, hey, I don't know if it's for you, but a buddy of mine has been bringing this new company to market. And these things that I keep saying, I'm throwing out different ideas of it, but one of the greatest things that you can do is you can take time when you're by yourself in your car, in your mirror, somewhere, somehow, and you can practice these so that when you get a chance to make an invitation, it actually comes off a little bit smooth. You're not blue in the face. You're not trembling. You're not blushing. You're not verbally vomiting all over somebody. You're not standing there handing them a stick of greens like a weirdo, right? Or it might work, but if you practice, you're going to start to figure out the things that are going to feel natural to you. But what's so important is that you're not asking if they want to, you're simply presenting them with a solution to a problem. Not sure if they'll take it, but we're going to then direct them to something. So now here comes the second part. You're going to introduce them to Kevin. This can be on a 3-way call. This can be on a group chat. That also applies for, you can introduce them to somebody that's in your team. You can introduce them to somebody that's in your support team, right? What's important here is it's not who you're introducing them to. It's that you're introducing them to somebody other than yourself that is going to corroborate your story. So, group texts work super, super good with a voice message, even with a group text. Whatever the case may be. And if you are out here working this business with us, 2 things are going to happen. First of all, on the job training, because if you listen to Kevin talk to somebody 5 or 10 or 15 times and you feel like you're the most awkward person on the planet, you're going to figure out pretty quick what types of patterns that he uses to communicate to somebody new, to create rapport, to ask them a couple of different questions, to validate you, and to then, of course, share with them what's going on with the greens and what's going on with the business. Now, how do you create? We always talk about the myth of duplication. ultimately, what are you trying to duplicate? Remember, we're trying to duplicate a soldiers of practice, right? And we're trying to duplicate a whole army of people that are willing to do these handful of things. So number one, make exposures. Number two, connect people, right? Number three is, and of course, it's to make a presentation, something like that, right? So the first thing is that people need to connect potential prospects to get presented to so that the thing can grow. And then the next part that they have to do is they have to become the person that can become the third party, right? So it's like the goal is not to lean on Kevin for life. The goal is to get new people started, lean on Kevin to help them get started. And as they get started, have them now use you as the third party or the expert so that now you can tell the story, you can connect with their people, you can keep an eye out for talent, because that's another key part of this business is that everybody always wonders, how do you find great people? And the law is this, is that basically if everybody, like Kevin says, knows 1,000 people by first name, the statistic is that if you graduated high school in America, you actually know 2,000 people by first name basis. But let's say that everybody knows 1,000, you could go through your 1,000 trying to find a couple key people. But what happens now if you have a couple of people in your team looking through their 1,000, right? And then you go down another level, 3 by 3, right? By the time you're just 2 levels down in this business, 3 times 3, you have a team of 12. You have 12,000 potential people in the universe to find a couple of rock stars. Out of 12,000 people, do you think there's a couple of people out there that might want more time, more money, better health, more fun? I'd be willing to bet there probably are. And if you can get introduced to them because there's a relationship somehow, the likelihood that they will listen for your influence, for what you are looking for and what they are looking for is so much higher than if you went and interrogated 12,000 people on the streets. Kevin can tell you about that. He tried it all over the Midwest. Okay. You're going to get on a conference call. So now we got exposure 3-way. You're going to get on a conference call. Depending on how big your business is, you're going to get on anywhere between, let's say, 1 and 3 conference calls per week, right? And that simply is kind of part of the game. The next thing that you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing something that we call Fast Start Game Plan. So a Fast Start Game Plan is taking the newest person that enrolls in your business and helping them get onboarded. We've talked about that in other calls, so I won't go too into depth about what that takes. But of course, it's getting somebody familiar with their back office, showing them how to get a coupon code, showing them how to turn their auto ship on and off, and showing them how to gather their first couple of customers and distributors. And now you're going to be looking to qualify somebody to their first 3 influencers in their team. So what you're going to find out is that occasionally when you bring somebody into the business, they will go out and they'll, these are the most fun kind that you'll have, is that basically you'll call them up and say, hey, we got to get your business started. And they said, okay, great. I've got my first 3 and we got to teach them all what they're doing because you don't know. You're like, great. But what's going to happen more often than not is that you're actually going to enroll somebody and they're going to wait for you to help them get their business started. They're going to wait for you to teach them how to do it. They're going to wait for you to take that first step. And so that first step, of course, is helping them find their first 3 influencers in their team. And the last thing that we're going to have as a behavior set here is following up. Nothing happens if you don't follow up. It is not super likely that people that you share greens with, occasionally this will happen where they're like, oh, I loved that. I got to get more of that from you. Sometimes that'll happen, especially if they're friends of yours, right? So you're past the rapport stage. But if you're simply just meeting somebody, putting some irons in the fire, sowing a good seed, it requires circling back and saying, hey, did you give that any more thought? Hey, I got you connected with so-and-so. Hey, was it, what's the next step? Was there something else that you needed to see? Or another way to follow up is to promote to somebody the next thing that they need to go see or do, right? Could be like a call like this if they're on the fence. It could be another, website. It could be a webinar that the company's doing. It could be any number of different things, or simply giving them an update. Updates are amazing. You can just say, hey, this is what's happened since I last talked to you. If you're out there cranking, it's super easy to tell people about what's new in your business, right? Like, hey, since I last talked to you, I had 5 new customers, order from me, and it actually put gas in my car this week. It was awesome. Anyway, hope that you're good. So those are the behaviors. And now what I'm going to say is that these are some generalities right here. If this is something that you want to have be a supplemental income, try to find a way, the first 2 activities, basically making exposures and connecting them to somebody, those are going to be the activities that drive everything else in the business, right? And so if you can find a way to do one of those on the daily, let's say 6 days a week, that's going to be a great start to get to having a business that actually pays you consistently on a monthly basis. If you want it to turn into something more than, a side hustle, you want it to actually be able to feed the mortgage, for example, feed the new car payment. Diesel trucks cost $70,000-$80,000 now. So even if you just want a truck to work in, you're going to have a $1,200 or $1,300 a month payment. If you want to do that, you're going to look at maybe 2 per day, right? 2 per day. So it's like 1 a day, maybe, if it's just kind of looking to get that supplemental income, 2 a day if you're looking to really like put a comma in that supplemental income per month. And if you want to turn this into a full-time deal, I would be looking at 5 to 10 per day. If you do that, the law of sowing and reaping and the fact that you're building a fire, you're adding logs to the fire, in not that long, you will have more going on in your greens business than you have ever had before. And you'll be one step closer to that army of robots moving bricks across the field. So we're going to come up with some really good tools that we can share with everybody, new and old, on the team to actually do this. We know that it works. And there's no better time basically than now, with coming into the new year, wrapping up this year, going into cold and flu season, to basically be crusading and to be making plans and to be getting ready, for what we're going to do. Take the things that I just described, Kevin put them in the liner notes below, to start thinking about, okay, if I had to do all these different things, maybe you could put them on a whiteboard, maybe you could put them on a piece of paper, and then keep an eye out for a couple of tools coming your way that's going to aid in that. And hopefully, between what Kevin described and what I described, you have a little bit of the philosophy of engaging in the practice of it and a couple of the nuts and bolts of what that practice might actually look like. And so that's everything I got tonight. Thank you. I went a little bit long. Yeah, Kevin's hitting it right now in the liner notes. We got 1 is exposures, 2 is connecting, 3 is conference call, 4 is onboarding, 5 is helping somebody, let's call it a fast start, get their first 3. And the last one is, of course, following up. So thanks so much, everybody. And I'm done.